I knew the day was going sideways the second the SUV tires crunched my gravel like they owned it. Not because I'm some paranoid hermit, but because the guy in front stepped out wearing a brand new authority face like it still had the price tag tucked inside the collar. You ever meet someone who talks like a rulebook and looks like a debt collector? Yeah, that. He had a badge on his chest that said wildlife enforcement, a stiff cap pulled too low, and eyes that didn't match the costume. Flat eyes. Transaction eyes. The kind of eyes you see on a man who's been told, say this, do that, collect your check, and don't think too hard. He walked right up to my porch like he'd practiced it in a mirror. "Mr. Mercer," he said, crisp and loud enough for an audience I didn't have. "We have a warrant to search these premises." I didn't move. I didn't flare up. I just watched him, because 20 years ago, I learned something useful in places I don't like talking about. The moment you give a bully your heat, he knows he can steer you. So I kept my hands loose at my sides, leaned a shoulder into the porch post, and let my voice stay easy. A warrant for what, exactly? He gave me the smile, the one that tries to look polite but can't help showing teeth. Anonymous tip. Illegal poaching of protected species. For a second I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so stupid it insulted my intelligence. This ranch isn't a hunting camp. It's not a trophy wall. It's Coyote Hollow. A patch of stubborn land outside Juniper Flats that I rebuilt board by board after I got tired of the world being loud. And it isn't just mine. Inside that house behind me, there were 5 men asleep who'd spent too much of their lives waking up to explosions and screaming and chaos. Guys who came home and found out peace is harder to learn than war. I don't run a clinic. I'm not anybody's therapist. I'm just the guy with a porch light that stays on and a place where the night is quiet enough to breathe again. The badge guy waved, and 3 more men spread out like they were in a movie, boots too clean, holsters sitting stiff on hips that didn't look used to carrying weight. Hired muscle, playing dress up. They didn't ask questions. They didn't introduce themselves. They walked straight toward my old pole barn. That's when I knew they weren't here to find something. They were here to find something. My first instinct was the old instinct, the one that snaps your spine straight and makes your jaw set. Get off my land. Now. But you don't stop a snake by yelling at it. You let it show its fangs. So I nodded once slow. Be my guest. 10 minutes later, one of them shouted like he'd discovered the crime of the century. He strutted out holding a clear evidence bag, and inside it were 3 long white feathers with black tips, and right beside them, a rusty spring trap that looked like it belonged in a museum. Well, the lead guy said, voice full of fake disappointment. Whooping crane feathers. This is federal. He leaned in like we were sharing a secret. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. My blood went cold, not because I believed him, but because I understood the play. A protected bird. A trap. A headline. A court fight that takes years. Years I'd spend paying lawyers instead of paying feed, fixing fences, buying groceries for men who were learning how to live again. And right as he started his little speech, I heard it. A low rumble down County Road 9. Like thunder deciding to show up early. It grew, deepened, stacked into harmony. 6 engines, then more behind them. 1 bike is a hobby. 2 is a weekend. 6 is a statement. The Blacktop Brotherhood rolled over the hill in a clean, staggered formation like they'd done it 1,000 times, because they had. They pulled up behind my truck one by one and killed their engines together, and the silence that followed weighed more than the noise. The lead guy's confidence cracked so fast I almost felt embarrassed for him. My buddy Miles, the one everyone calls Deacon because he's got the calm voice of a preacher and the patience of a saint, swung off his bike and looked straight at me, not the badge. "Jack," he said, like we were talking about the weather. "Everything all right?" I nodded toward the barn. "They say I'm a poacher." Deacon's eyes drifted over the agents and the evidence bag, then back to me. "Huh," he said softly. "Looks official. Right up until it doesn't." That was all. No threats. No shouting. Just calm certainty. The badge guy swallowed hard, looked at the line of leather vests and steady faces behind Deacon, and suddenly decided he had somewhere else to be. "We'll be in touch," he muttered, and his crew practically jogged back to their SUV like the gravel was on fire. They peeled out, throwing dust in the air like an insult. When the road settled, Deacon looked at the barn again. "They planted it," I said. "I know," he answered, voice low. "Question is, who's paying them?" And I stared out at the ridge where the new development sat like a row of perfect teeth. Stonegate Bluffs. Fresh asphalt, fresh paint, fresh money. Greed with landscaping. That's when it hit me, clear as a bell. This wasn't about feathers. This was about land. My land. Stonegate Bluffs had been creeping closer for months, the way a shopping mall creeps toward a small town, smiling while it swallows. The HOA president, Mary Ann Vale, had come by about 4 weeks earlier wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my first pickup. She talked about community standards and visual harmony, and I swear she said the word harmony like it tasted good. Complained about my barn paint. Complained about the fence line. Complained about my unregistered structures, like a chicken coop is a felony. But her eyes weren't on my fence. Her eyes were sweeping my acreage like a realtor's measuring tape. When I told her, politely, that my property line wasn't a suggestion, the complaint started. Nuisance calls, noise claims, suspicious activity. All nonsense. All dismissed. Then came the big swing. Federal-level nonsense. That night, we gathered in the barn. The brotherhood smelled like leather, oil, and the kind of anger that doesn't shout, it simmers. Big Ron was there, built like a refrigerator and twice as quiet. Corey was there, always cracking jokes, the kind that make you laugh even when you don't want to. And Ethan, young, sharp, always noticing things. Ethan wasn't a hacker, he wasn't breaking into anything, but he had a gift for patterns. He listened to the way people talked, the way they avoided certain words, the way money moved. We could roll up to her house, Ron grumbled, and explain some things. A murmur of approval moved through the group, because that answer feels good for about 5 seconds. Deacon lifted a hand. And then what? He said, calm as still water. We hand them exactly what they want. A headline. Biker gang threatens HOA. They're trying to paint Jack as a criminal. Don't help them with the brush. He was right. So we fought with our heads. Ethan found out Stonegate's HOA meeting was the next night. Open forum, posted publicly. We show up, Deacon said. We don't go in loud. We go in steady. That was the plan everyone heard. The plan that could leak without ruining US. Because the truth was, I had a bad feeling crawling up my spine. Whoever planted those feathers knew exactly where to put them. Not out in the open, not too hidden. Just right. Like someone had walked my barn before. Like someone knew our routines. And that thought is poison. It makes you look at your own people sideways. It makes laughter sound like a cover story. It makes a phone buzz feel like betrayal. For 2 days we tried to find proof the clean way. Public records, contractors, anyone who'd worked for Stonegate. A guy who used to do landscaping there agreed to meet us at a diner off the highway, then never showed. Instead, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Should have stayed in your lane. 8 words, but they hit like a fist. Somebody knew where I was going. Somebody knew before I even left my driveway. That night, I sat on my porch staring into the dark, feeling older than I had any right to. Deacon came out and sat without a word for a long time, just rocking slow in the old chair like he was letting the silence settle. Finally, I said it. We've got a leak. Deacon didn't look surprised. He just nodded once. Yeah, he said. And now we catch it. Without breaking ourselves. Here's the part people love to imagine as some big violent showdown. It wasn't. Not the way you're thinking. The smartest trap doesn't look like a trap. It looks like a mistake. So we made a plan with 3 fronts. A show, a search, and a test. Front 1 was the show. We rolled up to Stonegate Bluffs with a dozen bikes in a clean line and parked like we were placing chess pieces. Engines cut together. Silence fell like a curtain. Homeowners in pastel shirts stared like they'd never seen a working man up close. Mary Ann Vale stood at the clubhouse door with 2 private security guys who looked like they'd been hired from a mall. And right behind her was the Real Snake. Grant Holloway, the developer. He had that billboard smile, the one that says I build dreams, while his eyes said I crush problems. Deacon stepped forward and kept his tone polite, almost friendly. Evening, he said. We saw the meeting was open forum. We've got a few concerns. Mary Ann's smile tightened. This meeting is for residents, she snapped. You need to leave. Corey chuckled under his breath and leaned toward me. She talks like she charges by the syllable. That almost got me smiling, and I hated that it did. Deacon didn't budge. We'll be quick, he said. Mostly we want to ask why someone impersonated officers on Jack's property. That word impersonated. It landed. You could feel the room shift. People leaned in. The security guys glanced at Grant. Mary Ann's eyes flickered. Just once. Fear, then anger to cover it. That was the show. That was front one. Everybody's eyes up front. Everybody's attention locked on the confrontation they expected. Front two happened quietly. Ethan wasn't breaking into anything. He wasn't forcing doors or doing anything stupid. He simply moved like a guy who belonged there. Because when people are panicking, nobody looks twice at the guy holding a clipboard. He slipped into a side hallway where the office doors were. And what do you know? One of them was unlocked. Arrogance is a gift. Inside, he wasn't rummaging. He wasn't trashing the place. He was looking for what greedy people always leave behind. Receipts. Printed invoices. Vendor slips. Notes. The stuff that doesn't feel criminal when you write it, but feels real criminal when someone else reads it out loud. Front three was the test. The leak test. The night before, I told the Brotherhood one version of the plan. That we'd confront Marianne at the meeting, loud but peaceful. Then I set the bait, casual as a shrug. Heard there might be a package drop behind the clubhouse. I said, someone with info on Holloway. If you're back there and you see anything, text me. And I watched one man's eyes when I said it. Troy, newer member, good writer, always short on cash, always suddenly able to buy new parts. He nodded too fast, smiled too hard. I got you, Jack, he said. The words sounded right. The timing didn't. Sure enough, during the meeting, while Marianne and Deacon were trading words up front, Troy drifted toward the back lot like he was pulled by a magnet. I followed at a distance, using the hedges as cover, not because I wanted a fight, but because I needed the truth. The loading area smelled like trash and bleach. 2 dumpsters. One security light flickering like it couldn't decide if it wanted to help. Troy stepped into the open and pulled out his phone, thumb moving quick. He was sending the signal, confirming the bait. 2 figures appeared from the dark, not carrying a package, not carrying anything at all, just hands in pockets and shoulders squared. Private security. Holloway's boys. That was the moment. The moment Troy's lie collapsed around him. I stepped out and kept my voice low. You looking for something? Troy flinched so hard, he almost dropped his phone. His face did that thing guilty faces do, trying to rearrange reality fast enough to survive it. Jack, he stammered. It's not what it looks like. Then tell me what it is, I said. One guard took a step like he wanted to be brave. Deacon's whistle cut through the night, sharp and clean. Our signal. Ron and Corey rounded the corner with 3 more brothers and blocked the only exit. Nobody threw a punch. Nobody needed to. Troy sagged like his bones finally remembered they were tired. They offered me money, he whispered. Holloway's lawyer. He said they just wanted you to sell. Said the pressure was just business. Said nobody would get hurt. I stared at him. And you believe that? Troy's eyes filled. I needed it, he said, voice cracking. I'm drowning, man. I could have yelled. I could have snapped. But all I felt was this cold, bitter disappointment, like biting down on foil. Needing something doesn't make it yours, I said. Not like this. And right then, back inside the clubhouse, everything blew open. The speakers crackled. And Marianne Vale's voice filled the room. Not live. Recorded. Clear as day. I don't care how you do it, she said, sharp and ugly. Put the feathers in his barn. Put the trap where they'll find it. I want him buried in paperwork until he sells. The room froze. Then the projector screen lit up with images Ethan had pulled from the office. Invoices for replica feathers, a vendor receipt for a vintage display trap, and an email chain where Grant Holloway called my ranch Phase 2's missing piece. People stood up shouting. Marianne's face went white. Holloway's smile vanished like it had been wiped off with a rag. The sheriff's deputies arrived to a room full of witnesses and a screen full of receipts. That's the funny thing about greedy people. They think they're invisible right up until they're projected in high definition. Outside, Troy started sobbing, and it wasn't the fake kind. It was the kind that comes out when a man realizes he traded a family for a paycheck that won't even last. We didn't hurt him. We didn't scream. We brought him back to my barn later, where we'd planned all this, and we stood in a circle under the rafters with the smell of oil and dust and old promises in the air. Deacon stepped forward, touched the patch on his vest, and spoke quiet, so everyone had to lean in. This isn't decoration, he said. It's a promise. You don't ride alone. You don't sell your brother. You don't put a price tag on loyalty. Troy couldn't meet our eyes. I pulled a small blade from my pocket, not dramatic, not theatrical, just a tool, and I cut the stitching holding his patch. Clean. Quick. I placed it in his shaking hands. This isn't about anger, I told him, voice low. This is about the line. And you crossed it. Troy walked out into the dark holding that patch like it weighed 100 pounds. We let him go. That was the sentence. To walk alone. Weeks later, the headlines wrote themselves. HOA scandal, developer under investigation, evidence tampering, impersonation, conspiracy. Stonegate Bluffs went quiet. Yard signs came down. People stopped waving like they'd been caught cheering for the wrong team. Some homeowners showed up at my gate with pies and apologies and eyes that looked embarrassed to finally see me as human. One of them said, "We were so focused on property values. We forgot people have value." I nodded, because what do you even say to that? The ranch stayed ours. The men inside kept sleeping. The garden kept growing. Ron built a greenhouse. Corey fixed the old tractor and told everyone it just needed encouragement, which is his way of saying he hit it with a wrench until it behaved. Life settled back into something almost peaceful. Almost. Because peace isn't just quiet. Peace is trust. And trust, once cracked, doesn't go back together the same way. So here's where I'm going to make some of you mad, and I'm doing it on purpose because I want the comments. If Troy had been your brother, would you have forgiven him? Would you have let him earn it back? Or is betrayal the one debt you never refinance? No matter how sorry the person looks when the money dries up? And what about Marianne Vale and Grant Holloway? Do you think they were the villains? Or just the kind of people society quietly rewards until they get caught on a projector screen? Drop your take below. Tell me if you think justice is punishment, or exposure, or redemption. And tell me the most unfair power play you've ever seen someone pull in real life. Because I promise you, the way these fights start isn't with fists. It's with assumptions, paperwork, and people who think you'll stay quiet.